Hi everyone, welcome to the South Jersey STEM panel for college admissions. For our panelists, we have some amazing seniors here to share their personal college application experiences, so all of our underclassmen in South Jersey STEM can have some advice. I'm Isabella Mocha, one of the Morristown leaders at South Jersey STEM, and I'll be moderating this panel today. So without further ado, we can have everybody introduce themselves then.
All right, great. Thank you, Bella. So my name is Butani. My college choice is Princeton University, and something about myself is that I really like playing tennis, being outdoors, and I'm a major science nerd, as you can see from the stickers on my water bottle. So there you go.
Hi, I'm Kaitlyn Burkhardt. I will be attending George Washington University and majoring in public health and psychology. Something about myself is that I really like mental health, if that's not clear from what my major is, and I also like playing tennis.
Hi, I'm Jenna Ference-Salo. I'm going to be attending Carnegie Mellon University next year and double majoring in computational biology and artificial intelligence. And I really love dancing.
Hi, my name is Jill Smith. I'm going to Barnard College next year. I don't have a major yet because it's a liberal arts school, but I'm an intended neuroscience major as of right now. And I do the costumes for my high school's musicals, and my dog was in one of them.
Great, that sounds really interesting. It looks like we have a lot of smart seniors here to give the viewers some good advice. So our first question is going to be, how would you recommend finding different opportunities in high school?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, I'm really interested in science, and I don't think I mentioned this before, but I'm probably looking at majoring in molecular biology. But when I started high school, I didn't really know that. I just knew that I like science, so I started doing different things that I enjoyed. And I think the biggest thing for finding different opportunities is make sure you do things that you're really actually passionate about, because if you do things that you don't have as much of an interest in, I think that definitely comes through, and it makes your extracurriculars a lot more tedious, I think, and a lot less enjoyable. And when you enjoy something, it becomes easier to do. So I think that's the biggest thing. But then another thing for finding different opportunities is don't be afraid to just reach out to people. One of my biggest activities in high school was I did research, and the way that that kind of happened was I would just reach out to different college professors and just kind of shoot my shot, I guess to say. And it didn't always go well, but I feel like sometimes when you just take the opportunity to ask, you get really good results out of it. So I guess the biggest thing is just ask. What's the worst that could happen? And if it doesn't work out, sometimes you can get new leads off of that.
So what I did was freshman year, I got involved in so many different things. And throughout the years, I've stopped doing certain things just depending on my interest. But I would recommend, like on the week of school that you have a club affair, just try and do everything that even remotely piques your interest, and then you can narrow it down later. That way you have the connections and everything like that. And second, if there isn't an opportunity, just make one. I founded a mental health club at my school because I wanted to do something related to mental health. And then from there on, I figured out what I want to do with my major, got an internship. Basically, just if there isn't one, just make one.
Yeah, I completely agree with Maya and Kaitlyn. I think reaching out is super important. I'm in a specific like math science and computer science program at my school, so our community is sort of like close knit and tight, which is really nice. And I've been able to get really close with teachers, and a lot of the teachers might have good opportunities for you, and which is exactly what I did. I reached out to them, and they found me some good like over the summer courses and stuff I could take, which was really nice, and a lot of activities to do. And I also completely agree with Kaitlyn. If there's something you really are passionate about, like just start a club. Like me and my friends started the greenhouse club at my school, and it's been amazing. So yeah.
You guys pretty much covered it all. I totally agree with all of you. I think it's especially going off what Jenna said, a lot of your teachers might know professors, or if you take college classes at a community college or university, um, they might know people, if you're interested in working in a lab or having an internship. You never know, and it doesn't hurt to reach out and ask. Like Maya said, maybe they'll know someone else who has an opportunity for you. And then also something I did um, was like did research online to try to find things I could do. Prep Scholar has a few good articles about local like research institutes you can do over the summer for free and things like that that I found really helpful.
Okay, great answers, everybody. So next question is, how should other high schoolers spend their summers?
So that's a great question and one that I dealt with a lot. I think for all of us, it's a little bit tough because I think kind of like two of our summers were very different because of COVID. So a lot of programs were shut down or were virtual. Personally, I applied to a bunch of summer research programs my junior year and was rejected from all of them. So that summer was not the most productive for me, but honestly, it kind of goes back to the idea of like making your own opportunities. I tried to get research during the summer. It didn't work out. So I kind of just continued doing what I was doing before. I took some online courses about artificial intelligence because that's what I was interested in doing. So if the whole summer program thing doesn't work out for you, that's totally fine. I would say just spend your summer doing something that you're kind of interested in. If you like learning about something, then go ahead and study that. But don't necessarily push yourself so hard for doing all the summer programs every single year. I don't know how big of a difference it makes because I like had no summer programs and it didn't really matter for me. I think more than anything, it just matters for college that you show that you care about something and you're working towards something. But just then, like for your own mental health and your own sanity, like make sure you enjoy your summers too. That is supposed to be a time for break.
Going off of what Maya was saying at the end, I think you should just have fun. In your summer, you work so hard during the school year that you deserve time off. Of course, if your way of having fun is, taking courses like Maya, then go for it if that's what you want to do. But in my personal opinion, how I spent my summers was enjoying time with my friends, going to the beach, sleeping, just getting the much needed relaxation I needed so that during the school year I could push myself.
Yeah, I think summer is a great opportunity just to relax and stuff. I ended up taking a few classes over the summer, which I thought were really helpful. So if there's some like a class you're really passionate about that your school doesn't offer, like I took anatomy and physiology, what my school doesn't really have. I ended up taking that over the summer, which was great. But also like you have to remember that like summer is your time to relax and enjoy yourself, and you do got to live your life a little. But yeah, summer like courses and other like activities are also great to do.
Yeah, definitely. I think personally, my experience with summer classes was not fantastic, but if you are interested in, getting a few college credits, or even my high school let me take a class at RCSJ instead of taking the software apps requirement to graduate, which was nice. So I had more room in my schedule during the school year. So you just figure out what works for you. And I think also if you have a summer job that's like not some fancy internship or summer program, like that's completely fine. Um, Obviously, everyone's financial situation is different, and if you're even if you just like want the money, you're like wherever you apply isn't going to care that it's not like some really fancy internship if you're just working like a minimum wage job because a lot of those internships do not pay, which kind of sucks. So if you can get those opportunities and want to go for them, go ahead, but don't feel guilty about choosing what's right for you. Um, like don't choose anything based on like prestige, I guess.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. So the next question is, how did you choose what colleges to apply to and ultimately the college you'll be attending?
Okay, so I think this is a really important question, especially looking at what's happened over the last few years with like people applying to like I know people who applied to upwards of 20 colleges, which is crazy. Like just for your mental health, I cannot imagine writing that many college essays because it is painful. So I would say definitely spend the time. And I know my mom was like bothering me about this over the summer and I didn't want to do it, but I think when I did, it was very helpful. Spend the time to actually look at colleges and kind of start to figure out what you like. Like, are you looking for a bigger school, a smaller school? Do you want to be in a city, in a town? Those kinds of things. Like things like student life do matter, like the class size, the location. Those things are ultimately going to affect your experience because you can get a good education at most schools as long as you make the most of your opportunities. So I think that stuff really matters. And then this is going to sound kind of weird, but I think the biggest way I chose the schools I wanted to apply to and ultimately the school I want to go to was off a vibe. When I walked on the campus, I was like, yeah, like I could definitely see myself here. And some schools it clicked, some schools it absolutely did not. So it's sometimes nice to just go on the campus and like you can see the students walking around. Like, do they look happy? What are they doing? And if you know someone or have connections, to like, I wouldn't reach out to like friends of friends of friends, be like, hey, I heard you go to the school. Like, do you like it? It's kind of awkward to start off, but normally most people are nice about it. But that can be helpful to get an idea of like what experiences of schools are like. And sometimes it's just a feeling, but I think overall the biggest thing is make sure you're applying to schools that you actually would want to go to, like safeties, targets, and reaches. Make sure all the ones in that range are all ones you can actually see yourself at. And I think that takes some of the pressure off the college application process, because as long as you get into one of your schools, you'll be happy.
So basically, I agree with everything that Maya said. I applied to a total of 9 schools, and my basics for how I chose the original schools was based off of things that I loved when I was a child and places that I was connected to. So, school on my list was Georgetown University because I saw it when I was younger and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to go there. I'm not going there. But, and then there's like schools like Michigan and St. Joe's University, which is where my parents went. So, that started like the foundation of my list. And then from there, I began looking for locations I liked, such as DC, which is where I'm ending up. And then another way I found more schools just to add to make sure I had target reach and safety, all of those, was since I played tennis, I was looking at D3 schools. And then finally, when I realized I wanted to focus on public health, I added some schools that maybe I wouldn't love that much, but they still had a good public health program and were safeties. So just in case if my top schools didn't work out, I'd still have a school that had what I needed and it had a good program. So I added schools like University of Pittsburgh, and funnily enough, the school I'm going to was originally added to my list as a safety just because it has the number 11 public health school. So my main thing is keep your eyes open. Like, just, you might not end up where you expect, clearly because I hadn't even toured George Washington and I was adamantly against a city school. But so just keep your eyes open. Something might come your way and just be prepared for something that surprises you.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the two biggest things I looked at when deciding what colleges I was going to apply to and what colleges I ultimately ended up at was like location and how good they were for my major. I was pretty confident that I was going into computer science or engineering when I was applying, and I ended up going into computer science. But I was looking at colleges that were like ranked high in like computer science majors, especially like computational biology. And then the other thing was location. Like I'm from Michigan, so I wanted to stay like pretty close to Michigan since I have a lot of like all of my family's here except my sister who lives in New York, and I wanted to be close to her too. So every single college I applied to was like East Coast. I think the farthest one I applied to was like in North Carolina, but still not like super far from my home. So I think those are the two biggest things. And then I would also say, like, if you're able to, definitely tour the colleges you apply to, because the vibe is definitely like a big factor. Because I think one of the like my dream college before I applied, I ended up like visiting anywhere was Johns Hopkins. And then when I got there, I was like, oh, this is not going to be right for me. So I did end up applying, but I ultimately did not end up deciding to go there at all. So I'd say like vibe is definitely a very big factor.
I totally agree with you, Jenna. Another factor in mine, I wasn't really able to actually visit a lot of schools in person. I chose Barnard early decision without ever having been on campus, because I went to a lot of virtual information sessions or virtual tours. I believe a lot of schools still have those going on because of the pandemic, but I think they've worked really well, especially if you can't travel to the schools that you'd like to visit. Um, you can still ask students questions or ask someone who works in admissions, you can ask them certain questions. And I really liked that. And another reason I chose Barnard was originally, if you don't know, Barnard College is one of the 4 undergraduate colleges of Columbia University. And originally I was looking at Columbia College, but I really liked Barnard because of their curriculum. Columbia has everyone take like the same required classes, whereas Barnard has just distributions. So you have to take like a thinking digitally class, for example, which take a class that involves some kind of work with computer science or coding. So the curriculum, like the virtual tours I went on, were definitely a huge factor. And then I also really loved the location.
Nice. So, if you applied for scholarships or financial aid, what was that process like for you?
So, first of all, the financial aid process I feel like is unnecessarily complicated. So, definitely, like, if you're going to apply, think about that early on because the whole process for that is so confusing. There are definitely good resources online. So, don't be afraid to like look up how to do financial aid because honestly, you might need the resources. But that's the first thing with financial aid. The second thing is I started applying for scholarships honestly kind of late in the game because I didn't want to think about until after I'd done my college applications. Honestly, in retrospect, that was kind of not the best way of doing it. There are still a few scholarships now that you can apply for, but there's not a ton and it's kind of hard to find. So if you're going to apply for scholarships, definitely think about that early on. I wish I had thought of that ahead of time, but that's what this panel's for. So there you go. And then the whole thing with the scholarship applications, one thing that I found is the essays are a pain and they can be really intimidating, but a lot of times at a certain point you've done so many essays already for the college application process, so you can kind of just like mix and match essays from your college apps for scholarships and like take pieces from different essays and put them together. So don't let the essay part intimidate you too much because chances are you have something written already either from your personal statement or other supplementals that you can kind of piece together in an essay that works.
Disregard how my camera just flipped around like a second ago. But anyway, I did not apply to any scholarships or financial aid, but I did research it and I agree with Maya. It's confusing and intimidating, but I believe everyone who has the motivation to do it can definitely do it and get whatever they deserve.
Yeah, I have to completely agree with Maya. I also didn't do my scholarships until way too late, honestly. I think I was just so tired of writing essays. I was just like, nope, not gonna do them. But I definitely think that like scholarships are great, and if you really like need the money or just like want to apply for scholarships, definitely do it. And also, I've applied to a few recently, but definitely do it earlier on because there's not a lot of money going around right now, and I also messed up how much money my tuition was going to cost, and it is a lot more expensive than you think. So honestly, even if you don't want to apply for scholarships, just do it. Like, tuition's so expensive.
I think my one piece of advice when it comes to financial aid is make sure you appeal your financial aid decision if you are not happy with it. I applied early decision, so I couldn't do this, but I've heard from other students and friends that you can compare like an offer with another school you were accepted at. Um, my mom and I made an appeal for my financial aid decision at Barnard because it was not at all what we were hoping. And they rejected it, but they said we can make another appeal, so we're doing that. So even if the financial aid decision is not what you were hoping, like make sure you try again multiple times. And then the other thing with scholarships is, yeah, just keep track of those deadlines early. Same thing with financial aid. If you're a junior, like start looking at them now. And yeah, those essays will help you out later.
Great answers, everybody. Next we have, what was your experience with college interviews like?
So my experience with college interviews on the whole, I would say was actually really positive. I was really nervous for them, but all the interviewers I had were honestly really nice. And they kind of just want to have a conversation. I mean, I can only speak from my personal experience. I know some people had differing experiences with college interviews, but all the people I had were very friendly, just interested in having a conversation. They didn't ask me any like super difficult questions like, what are you going to be doing in 10 years? They just kind of wanted to get to know me. You are probably going to get the question like, why do you want to go to the school? It's a pretty basic question. You should probably have an answer to that question, even if it sounds pretty cliche. but everyone was really nice that I interviewed with. My one mess up with the college interview is I did say the wrong college in one of my college interviews for like reasons why I wanted to go to that school. So that was bad. And I did not get into that school, if you're wondering. So probably don't do that. But like other than that, they're hard to mess up. And honestly, from what I've heard, they don't play that big of a role in your admission decision. They can honestly really only help you, unless you say the wrong college.
Just forewarning before anything I say about college interviews, every college I did an interview with, I did not get into. So I don't know how much you want to take my advice. But anyway, college interviews are not as scary as you think. I remember being so scared before each and every one, but it's not as bad as you think. And I promise you that people will love you just for the way you are. But my 2 tips are, 1, for the question why you want to go there beforehand, look up some really like unique fact about the school. You'll impress the interviewer when you have this like one specific reason why. Like with my interview with Tufts University, I started talking about their mascot, the Jumbos, which is an elephant, which is such a weird topic to talk about when someone asks you, why are you applying to this top tier school? Yeah, the mascot. So I like, in addition to other things, obviously, don't just say that's the only reason, but it's a nice add-on that I think makes your interviewers like you even more. And then another thing is try and scope out the vibe of the interviewer. It's easy to focus things that you've done more towards their interests. Like for my Georgetown interview, I had someone who was very religious and cared about self-service. So I focused what the stories I told about how I volunteered through a church with my grandmother. So rather than like the countless other stories, it was just an easier way to connect with her more. So if you find a way to find that connection, then you have a better chance on making a good first impression.
Yeah, I think college interviews are definitely not as scary as you would think. I also agree with my, like, before I was going into them, I was absolutely terrified, but they're really not that bad. Also, every single interview I had, like, had something in common with me, which was really nice. Like, I remember my Yale interviewer, she like loved musical theater, and I was like, oh my gosh, me too. So it was really nice, honestly. The one, like, the biggest tip I could give is that, like, before every interview, I wrote like a little notes app of just like some things I'm passionate about, like what I want them to take away from the interview about me, and like also the reasons I want to go to school. Also, for reasons why you want to go to school, don't just like talk about your major. I would talk about like other things. Like I talked about like specific clubs there were, like I'm into dance. So I talked about if there's anything dance related, I would talk about that too. So I would just say, like, try to seem well-rounded in your interview and don't stress too much because they're really not that bad.
Oh my gosh, I totally agree with Jenna. Every interview I had like this long notepad. Um, Sometimes specific schools have different questions that they commonly ask, and you can usually find those online. Like I found a few like on Reddit and some other places, which they might not always be entirely accurate, but that can help you have like an idea and like feel more prepared going into it. And yeah, like talk about like specific reasons why you're interested in the school, like professors, classes. Um, and then I guess my last piece of advice would be to prepare questions for your interviewer. Depending on the school, you might have, or just like, by randomness, you might have a student, an alum, or like even an admissions counselor, which I had for one of mine. And I was like, she was very nice. I was very scared at first, but so yeah, just like prepare different questions and don't necessarily assume they're going to be a student or an alum unless you're told in advance.
All right, so it looks like we have a lot of great information so far. So moving on, the next question is how did you deal with the stress of the college application process?
So this is a really good question because as I started the college application process, I was having a lot of stress just over the fact of like, how was I going to stand out? Because I feel like there's a lot of people like me who like science and who have done similar things. So I feel like it's really hard to stand out. And honestly, one day I literally just sat outside and I took a notebook and wrote a list of all the things that I thought were unique about myself, like even really random things. Like I like pens, like that's stupid, but like I like pens, they're cool. So I just kind of like wrote a lot of really random things. I think the most stressful part for me was kind of trying to ask myself, like, okay, who am I? What makes me different? But I think at the end of the day, the best way that I dealt with that stress was just realizing, like, okay, I am a unique person, and all those little things about me that make me different do matter. Like the fact that I like pens, that does matter. All the little things about you make you different from everyone else. And it's really intimidating to think about how you need to stand out in a pool of however many thousands of people, but you don't need to. Just be yourself and you are already different.
So something that I think is really key to remember in this whole process is that whatever college you end up at, you will do amazing things, you will be happy, and if for some unknown reason, which is really unlikely, it doesn't go as planned, you can transfer, which is always a viable option. Keeping that in mind throughout my entire college process really just took like a huge weight off of my chest. Like you're making this gigantic decision that feels like if you make the wrong one, it's the end of the world. But guess what? It is not the end of the world if you choose the wrong college. So whatever happens, it'll end up perfectly. And another thing is I tried to focus on my senior year. College is something that is very big and scary, especially for myself for a lot of personal reasons. And the college admissions process kind of just made it seem like a big monster. So what I focused on was once I got my applications done, just to focus on my senior year, doing the things that are like brand new, like pep rally and stuff like that. And it really just helped me feel a lot better about the whole situation and just made me feel like college was a next step in my life.
Yeah, I completely agree with Kaitlyn. I think the biggest thing that helped me with my like stress going through everything is that I got my like college applications, like all the questions done like pretty early, like in the summer before my senior year, which was really nice because then like while everyone was still like rushing to finish everything, I was done. I was like happy. I was like, great, it's over. I think the other thing is like I really just tried to enjoy my senior year. It was like if because you have to wait so long to hear back from some of the colleges, it's hard to just like think about it all the time. So I really just tried to like enjoy time with my friends and enjoy like my last year of like high school and stuff. Also, I think I took up like drawing as a hobby because I was like, I need something else to do. So always like enjoying like finding new hobbies you enjoy is always like something like calming and releasing, helps you with stress. So yeah.
I feel like I'm the wrong person to ask this question because I don't think I dealt with the stress very well. My plan was I was applying early decision to Barnard, and I had a list of other schools I was going to apply to. So I was waiting to submit those applications until I like got a rejection because I don't want to pay like $1 million in application fees. Um, and the plan was submit those as soon as I get rejected, but they were not done. Like I pushed everything back because especially the essays because I was so like scared of them like not being good or whatever. Every time I would sit down to write one, I would just be like backspacing and couldn't even get like a sentence down. But I think what helped me the most with that and how like I finally got them done um was writing them on paper because you can't like write as fast as you can type, and it's a lot harder to like edit yourself and edit the things you say. And then obviously when you type it into the computer, like you can edit your grammar and how your sentence structure and use certain rhetorical devices if you want to. So yeah, like don't criticize yourself before you even start. I think that was my biggest problem and the best advice I could give.
Awesome. These are all very reassuring. So what do you think made you stand out in the college process?
Okay, so this kind of goes along with what I was just saying, but it's hard to stand out. And that was like super stressful for me. Then I kind of realized just being myself would allow me to stand out. I think what made me stand out, honestly, okay, well, I really like science. I've said that I think like 4 times now. It's very true. I think the thing that made me stand out, and it's a little cliche, but I think that passion came through in my essays. In a lot of my essays, I didn't take myself super seriously. I kind of just tried to come across like the person that I was. And I think just writing them super formally is not necessarily the right answer. Try to put yourself down on paper. And that's kind of difficult in concept. Like I'll give you examples of some of what my like college essays were to kind of hit that home. So my personal statement was about kind of my journey with science, but it started off with an anecdote about like how I made a time machine when I was younger and like all the random stuff I had done with science, because that's a big part of who I am. I like creating stuff, but they're not always serious. Another one of my essays was like, what's something you like to do for fun? And I literally wrote 500 words on how I like to go to the Dollar Tree and buy random things. Like that was an entire essay. So some of my essays were not super serious, but I think that's totally fine. Obviously, do write serious essays, show them that you're a person who's ready for college, ready to take on the world. But don't be afraid to also be yourself in your essays and let the passion for the things that you care about come through.
Going off of the thing of trying to show yourself on the page, I think just how I am as a person really came through. Like I am a very selfless person at heart, and I think that is what made me stand out, at least what I hope made me stand out. And sometimes during interviews, I got questions where, what makes you stand out in the college application process? And the answer was the same as I just gave it now. But another thing about writing, keeping yourself on the paper is that I wrote one of my essays about how I think commas are stupid. So it can be literally about anything you want as long as you're trying to get your values off. Like I think that's what really makes you stand out. So in my essay about commas, I said how you shouldn't write commas based off of grammar rules. You should write commas based off of how you think the sentence should go, which might have worked against me, but it showed me who I am, showed them who I am. So I think that's what was important, and I think that's how I came across to college applications.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that made me stand out was like maybe like my personal connection with what I was applying for, because I throughout like all my college applications I had like a pretty strong idea what I wanted to do. I wanted to like apply computer science with the medical stuff. And it was personal for me because a lot of my family has experienced like cancer and stuff, and I really wanted to use my strength in like computer science to help in that way, because I've always known that I'm not going to be a doctor. It just wasn't going to be right for me, and I didn't want to apply to something that, even though I could definitely make an impact in there and I don't think I'm going to be necessarily bad at it, it wasn't like a passion of mine. I wanted to do something where I could use what I'm passionate about, what I'm good at, to help other people. I also think the other thing is, even though I was applying for like computer science, not everything, like all my extracurriculars were based around computer science. I had a lot of other stuff going on, like specifically like community is super important to me. So I was part of like National Honor Society. Also like dance is doing part of me. So I was in the creative and performing arts program at my school. So I just think having that like, the well-roundedness and also having like a very like personal connection to what you want to do really helps you stand out in the college application.
I honestly think this is a really hard question to answer because a lot of my activities weren't really in the same vein. Like I did research at Brown University, and then I also was like in my school's theater department. Um, and you don't really know what made them choose you. But I think what I was personally most proud of on my application were my supplemental essays. Um, and I think like I really tuned them to the schools that I was applying to. Obviously, I only applied to one, but I mean, I guess that worked out for me. And I think, like they've said before, don't like write what you think they want to hear, um, because I think it's kind of usually easy to tell if that's faked or um, if you're just doing that to try to get in. Just try to be honest. They can see like how hard you've worked all of high school, like by looking at your transcript and your activities and your awards. So you don't really have to prove yourself in your essays. You can just express who you are.
Yeah, that's very true. So next we have, what was the most rewarding part of the college app process for you?
So there's a lot of challenging parts about the college application process. And I think those actually go hand in hand with what ended up being the most rewarding part for me. I've talked a lot about my struggles, kind of trying to figure out who I was, because how do you write about who you are to a college if you're not entirely sure who you are, what you want to do anyway? It's a really challenging thing. And I'm not going to sit here now and say, I have it all figured out. I know exactly who I am and what I'm going to do for the world. I don't really know, but that's what college is for. But I do feel like I'm more grounded and I have a better idea of that now, having written all of those college essays and having actually sat down and thought about, okay, but what things influence me? What things make a difference to me? So in that way, going through the essays is really difficult, but I do think you come out of it with almost a more global sense of self, kind of thinking like, I have a better idea now of who I am than I did when I started. And it's kind of hard to see when you're looking through the fog of it all, but I feel like when you come out on the other side, you kind of get that feeling.
So after I got my first rejection letter, and I say first because I got a couple, I fell into like a pretty long burnout where I just could not stand to do any work. It wasn't like senioritis. It was just like I could not see the point because I had worked so hard in high school and then I still got rejected from a college that was like has a 10% acceptance rate. So it was a little delusional at the moment. But it took a while for me to understand that colleges do not define your worth. And unfortunately, the most rewarding part was not as like uh, admirable as Maya's. It wasn't like really self-righteous. It just I got a big scholarship from my school, and I was like, yeah, at least someone likes me. So that was the most rewarding part.
I completely agree with Kaitlyn. I think the biggest thing I've discovered from like college applications is like you're more than your academic worth. And I feel like I've based a lot of my like personality and what I like believe in myself off based off my academic worth. And it's like this whole process taught me it's not about that. It's like I'm so much more than that. And also when I got like one of my first rejection letters, I was like, oh, I don't know how I'm gonna keep going anymore. But honestly, one good thing to remember is like fate is always has a plan. Like even if like you don't end up where you like were thinking about, like you're still going to go to an amazing school and you're still going to do amazing things. I think that's the biggest thing I've learned from the college process.
I think the most rewarding part for me was visiting campus and meeting people like on Instagram and social media or on campus who I would be going to school with, because you work so hard to get those applications in, do the financial aid, the scholarships that you can go to whatever school, and hopefully the school you choose you'll really like, which is the case for me. And it's really rewarding um, to like visit and be like, oh, I'm going to be here for the next 4 years. Um, and I think like having that sense of community even before you get on campus has been so amazing for me personally.
Yeah, very interesting answers, everyone. So lastly, we have, what advice do you have for other high schoolers who are both applying to college next year and at some point in the future? In other words, is there something you would do differently looking back at your whole college app process?
So I think the biggest thing that I would emphasize in terms of advice is throughout high school, make sure you're doing stuff that you really care about. And there's a lot of reasons for that. The first thing is like the most superficial thing is colleges can see right through that. I feel like when you have a lot of activities that you don't really care about, it definitely comes across. Second thing is it becomes tedious. I mean, if you've ever done something, I'm sure everyone has, because in school you have to do it all the time. If you do something for like a class or a subject or an activity that you don't care about, it is so tedious and so difficult to work on. But if you actually enjoy something, the time goes a lot quicker and I feel like you do better work. So those are two reasons. But then the last reason is ultimately college isn't the end all be all. There's also a world and a career and a life that you want to have. So spend your time doing things that you actually care about, things you're going to want to do in the future. That's the best preparation for life. And it's also just the best way to live your life up to this point. Because if you're not enjoying the stuff you do in high school, then it's not worth it, because you really only have one life to live. And high school is 4 years of that. So spend your time doing things that you actually care about. And that's not just to say like drop everything, don't do any extracurricular activities, but like do extracurriculars that you care about and things you might want to pursue in the future.
So the first thing my mom said to me when I got rejected from my ED school, which is the one that caused the burnout, was it was obviously the school that wasn't meant for me. She had said, like, anytime she wishes for something, it's at the school that we belong at, not the school that we wanted. Because sometimes the way it works out is not how you wanted. It's where you deserve to be, where you want, like where the school wants you, and everything like that. So I think if I could go back in time and tell myself that before the whole college application process, that even if a school doesn't admit you, you'll find the place that you deserve to be at, it would help me a lot. And also just have an open mind about everything. I remember going into it very close-minded, thinking, oh, how could this school not want me? I've done so many things. Um, and then I realized that the college admissions process is a very, very, very confusing and different process than you expect when you're growing up. You think it's like, oh, if you work hard, you're getting in. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way, and that sucks, but you'll end up where you belong. Clearly, I'm ending up at the school where I want to be and where I'll do things well. I probably wouldn't have done as well at other colleges if they had admitted me.
I think the biggest piece of advice I could give to someone like going through the college application or just going through high school in general is just find something you're passionate about, whether that be school and like or whether that be like sports or like your family or like relationships. Like just find something you're passionate about, because honestly that will make you feel so much better going through everything. And also I definitely agree with Kaitlyn. Like no matter what happens through the college process, even if you don't go to college, no matter what, you'll end up somewhere you're supposed to be, and everything's going to work out. Even if you don't believe it in the moment, it definitely will. So yeah.
I completely agree with Caitlin and Jenna. Obviously easier said than done, but try not to place your worth in what schools you do or don't get admitted to. It's just not worth it. And it's, not at all true. But I think other than that, the best advice I would have is make sure you know when deadlines are, when you should be doing certain things, like if you want to take the SATs or when FAFSA opens. Um, because my high school wasn't really the best at letting us know when those were. And, I know a lot of students now that still don't, that are juniors or even seniors. So make sure like you do your research, like when scholarships are due, when FAFSA is due, when your financial aid, if you have to do the college board specific form, um, when you have to take the SAT or ACT if you want to do that. Yeah, just make sure you know that, uh, like start looking at that junior year, because that's really important. And I know some schools aren't as great as being on top of you with that.
Great, that concludes our panel. I want to thank all of our panelists for coming out and taking the time to do this. You all had very insightful and thought out answers, which I know were helpful for me as a junior. And to everyone viewing this, I want to thank you for watching this and looking at the newsletter, and I hope that this was all helpful for you. So thank you.